The stars outside the great glass dome of the council ship blinked like tiny lights in the dark room above a cold world. The ship floated in silence between two dying suns, while inside the hall was full of sound voices, rising and falling in fear and wonder. Aliens from every corner of the galaxy had come. They had all gathered for one reason. They had found something strange. They had found something about the humans. The council chamber was round with glowing walls and floating chairs. Each seat held a leader or a thinker or a scientist from a different race. Some had wings, some had scales, some had eyes that glowed like fire, but all of them looked toward the center, where a large round screen began to turn on. A tall, thin creature with silver skin and 6 fingers raised his hand. He was the lead researcher. His name was Talker, and he worked for the Galactic Council for over 50 years. Today his voice shook as he spoke. We have studied the human homeworld Earth for 2 cycles. We believed it to be simple. We believed they were still new, still weak. But we were wrong. What we found will change everything. He waved his hand, and the screen showed an image. It was a place dry and cracked the sun. Above it looked like fire. The air shimmered from the heat. The numbers beside the image made the crowd murmur. It was hotter than most Starside factories. This place is called the Lut Desert, said Talker, one of the hottest places on the planet. No water, no shade, just endless heat enough to melt your bones. Another image came this time of deep green trees thick and wild with fog hanging in the air. Strange animals moved behind the trees with glowing eyes and sharp teeth. Talker called it the Amazon jungle, filled with creatures that kill in seconds, snakes that fly, insects that poison, frogs that burn skin. And yet humans go there, humans live there. Gasps rose across the hall. A 3-eyed creature from the star Bellion asked, how do they survive these places? Talker only nodded slowly and said, that is the question. Then came the ice, endless white hills, cold wind blowing like knives. Talker said, this is Siberia. Temperatures fall so low, even metal breaks. People freeze in minutes, but humans still live there and smile. The chamber grew quiet. All eyes watched the screen change again. This time it showed a giant mountain covered in snow with clouds around its top and winds so strong they could carry away a machine. Everest, said Talker, the tallest point on Earth. Humans climb it often. Many have died, yet more keep going. The last image was the most frightening. A lake made of fire. Lava bubbled and cracked under black rocks. It looked like a place in the old myths, a place of demons. Mount Uragongo, a living volcano. Humans live near it. They sleep while it burns below them. By now, many in the chamber looked uncomfortable. Some whispered to each other. Some looked at the exit as if they wanted to leave, but Talker kept speaking. These are not places of punishment, not prisons, not testing zones. They are homes, they are tourist spots, they are schools and cities and parks. Someone in the room shouted, this cannot be true. They must be lying. No one lives in places like this. Talker turned and pointed to a human sitting quietly in the back row, a tall man with brown eyes and calm face. He wore simple clothes. His name was Rain. He was Earth's ambassador. Is it true? Asked a blue-feathered diplomat. Do your people live in these places? Rain stood slowly. He smiled, not with pride, but with a kind of quiet knowing. Yes, he said, we live there. We walk those lands. We swim in those waters. Some of us even take pictures there for fun. Fun, repeated a snake-shaped alien. Confuse your kind, plays in fire and frost and poison. Rain shrugged at his home. He said, we do not see it as danger, not always. We see it as life. It makes us strong. The council began to murmur again, louder this time. One tall creature with crystal skin said, if these zones are not deadly to humans, then what is? Rain looked at him and said, maybe boredom. Laughter and shock passed through the room. Like a wave, one being dropped his data. Pat another leaned back with wide eyes. Talker raised his hand again, and the screen went dark. The images faded, but the fear and wonder did not. He said, we thought humans were weak, soft, short-lived. We were wrong. They come from a world filled with pain. And they do not hide. They build homes in danger. They raise children near death, and they smile while doing it. He turned to Rain and asked, what kind of beings are you? Rain simply said, we are human, and sat back down. Silence fell across the great hall. Outside, the stars kept shining, but inside the council chamber, a new fear had begun to grow. Not the fear of war, not the fear of death, but the fear of the unknown, the fear of a species that laughs at fire and ice and calls the deadliest places on Earth just home. The screen came back to life with a soft humming sound. Shadows moved across its surface as new images appeared, each one more dangerous than the last. But these were not from alien worlds. These were from Earth, the blue planet, the home of humans. And yet nothing on that planet looked safe. Nothing looked calm or peaceful. A wide empty land appeared next dry and cracked with sand flying through the air like smoke. The wind howled through the screen speakers strong enough to tear skin. This is the Atacama Desert. Said Talk or no rain has touched some parts of it. For over 500 years humans test their machines. Here humans walk across it by choice. The audience leaned forward confused and disturbed. A horned alien from Sector 9 asked, is this their testing ground for war and weapons? Talker answered no, it is where they take pictures, where they travel for fun, and where people make movies about survival. A new image slid onto the screen, tall cliffs rising from the ocean, black waves crashing against stone with fury behind them. The skies were gray, lightning danced above. This is Cape Horn, one of the most dangerous seas on their planet. The winds shift. Without warning, the sea swallows ships, but sailors still go. They call it challenge, and they even compete to pass it. A soft green mist took over the display, now a forest, so thick no light reached the ground. The air was full of sound, insects, birds, growls from shadows in the dark. This is a Congo basin. Said Talker, deadly insects, deadly animals, diseases in the water. But humans live here too. Humans study plants here and build homes among the trees. The chamber now felt cold. As fear began to spread to the room, the aliens began to see a pattern. Not only did humans survive these deadly zones, they accepted them. They learned from them. They made stories around them. One of the oldest council members, a being with silver leaves for hair, leaned forward and said, maybe we are not looking at this correctly. Maybe these are not death zones to humans. Maybe they are something else. Rain, the human ambassador, stood again, his eyes calm, his hands behind his back. He said, you are not wrong. These places are a part of us. They are where we learn how to keep going, where we learn how strong we can be. The screen changed again, this time showing a tornado spinning through flat lands with force enough to lift a truck into the sky. Behind it, humans watched from a distance. Some even filmed it. This is Tornado Alley in North America, where storms move like beasts and the sky turns black. Many flee, but others study them. Some even chase them with cars and cameras. A sea of ice appeared next, frozen waves and white fog moving across the land. This is Antarctica, colder than anything most species can survive. Humans walk here. Humans set up research stations. Here some stay for months, trapped in ice with no sun. Talker looked at the chamber again and said, we found more volcanoes, deserts, swamps, rivers full of crocodiles, cliffs that fall into the sea, jungles where plants eat meat. And in every single place we found humans, either living nearby or walking through for fun or for science or for challenge. A red-scaled diplomat from the Varn system stood and asked, how did they get this way? How do they not fear these places? Rain spoke again. It is because Earth is not a soft place. We were born into struggle. We had to learn to walk through pain and heat and cold. And when something tried to stop us, we learned to keep moving. The council chamber grew quiet again. The light from the screen flickered across their strange faces. Some had never faced war. Some had never seen a storm or a mountain or fire. And yet humans face them every day and call to home. A small yellow creature who had never spoken before suddenly asked a question. What do they feel when they stand in front of these deadly places? Rain smiled a little. He said, we feel alive. Talker said they have built homes near rivers that flood cities, near mountains that shake, near skies that throw fire, near oceans that pull ships to bottom. They do not run from it. They build stronger. They come back and try again. Another image appeared, children laughing as snow covered the ground, their hands red from cold, their clothes thick. But their smiles wide. This is not suffering, this is joy. The hall shifted from fear to wonder, and then to something else, respect. The silver-leaf elder spoke again. Perhaps we were wrong. Perhaps these humans are not survivors. They are something else. They are walkers of chaos, builders in the wild. They are makers of homes and storms. Rain said, we do not seek death. We seek to live fully, and Earth teaches us how. The screen slowly turned black again. The last image left behind was of a human climbing a tall cliff, alone, the wind trying to knock him down, but his hands steady, his eyes clear. Talker looked around the room and said these places would kill most species, but to humans they are lessons, they are memories, they are home. No one spoke as the lights came back on. The silence was not of fear anymore. It was of deep thought and perhaps a little awe. In the middle of space, floating between cold stars, the council now understood one truth. Earth is not kind, Earth is not easy, and the humans who call home are not either. The great hall remained silent. Not a single voice spoke, not even a whisper echoed to the floating chamber, where stars blinked outside, and fear blinked inside. The council members were frozen in thought, their eyes still watching the dark screen, where images of Earth's dangers had faded away, but the feelings they left behind still remained sharp like broken glass under bare feet. All eyes slowly turned toward the human in the back row, the only one in the chamber without armor or tech around him, no translator on his ear, no breathing aid, no protective shell, only a simple man with strong shoulders and a calm expression. His name was Rain, and his presence had been silent until now. The elder of Mistborn, a floating being made of light and memory, gave a slight nod, and the lights focused on Rain. The moment felt heavy. The air almost paused. The council wanted answers, but they were not sure what kind of answers they were ready to hear. Rain stood without fear, his movement quiet, but sure. His voice came soft but clear, louder than any machine or screen, because it was real and filled with something ancient. You asked how we survived these places, he said, looking around the circle of species, each one older than human history, each one powerful and proud, yet now uncertain. And still you asked how we live where fire walks and ice bites and poison waits behind green leaves. He stepped forward, the floor glowing under his boots. With every step, he moved slowly, like someone used to walking through storms and cliffs. The answer is not simple, he said, but it begins here. We do not just survive. We learn, we change, we grow. We do not fear these places, because they are not strangers to us. They are our teachers and our tests. He turned toward the screen, now blank, but still filled with memory. That desert you saw we call home to wind and silence, but it also holds stories, bones of ancient life, paintings on rock from those who came before us, and people who still walk there with their heads high. That jungle you saw, it sings at night and smells like earth after rain. It is not just danger, it is beauty. It is color, it is life with teeth, but still life. That ice land, that storm sea, that lava field, they do not chase us away. They call to something inside us, something that says, go see, go climb, go understand. A scaled being with long ears whispered, but many die there, do they not? Yes, said Rain, many do, but we do not run from death, we try to understand it. We do not seek pain, we seek meaning. And sometimes meaning is found on a high cliff or a cold field where breath turns into mist and time slows down. A young alien from the cloud swarm asked why would anyone risk everything for just a mountain or storm? Because we must, said Rain, his eyes now glowing not with power but with memory. Because if we stay in safe places, we forget who we are, we forget what we are capable of, we forget how to fail and how to rise again. He pointed upward, as if through the dome, through the stars, back to Earth. Our world does not care if we are ready. It throws us into the wild from the moment. We are born cold wind, hot sun, loud noise, strange pain. And yet we open our eyes, we cry, we crawl, we walk. The elder nodded slowly, as if understanding something for the first time, not with words, but with truth that settles deep in the spirit. Rain's voice grew stronger, not louder, but filled with something that made every being listen without blinking. We are not the strongest, not the fastest, not the tallest or smartest, but we have one thing that carries us through every danger. We do not stop. We break, and here we fall, and rise we lose and fight again. That is why we live in places others would fear. Because we do not want an easy world, we want a world that makes us better. He took a breath, not from tiredness, but to let his words settle like dust after battle. I saw my sister swim through frozen water, just to prove. She guys saw an old man climb a volcano to leave his past behind. I saw children build snow homes and laugh, while the sky dropped sharp ice around them. We are not monsters, and we are not gods. We are just human, but that is enough. Silent again, but not heavy now. It was deep, it was thoughtful. The council did not speak, but many lowered their heads, not in shame, but in respect. Taka, the lead scientist, looked at Rain with new eyes, his voice soft, but clear. Perhaps we did not study the humans closely enough, he said. Perhaps you did not study yourselves closely enough, replied Rain. He walked back to his seat, not as a soldier, not as a ruler, just as a voice of his kind. And in that quiet room, floating between two stars, something had changed, not just in the way the council saw humans, but in the way they saw struggle, pain, survival, and the strange strength of a species who dared to call fire and storm their friend. The council chamber no longer buzzed with voices the way it had before. No more whispers, no more questions, just quiet, and something new, something deeper than fear and stronger than shock, a feeling that wrapped around every being present and held them in place. It was the slow, heavy weight of realization. The elder of Mistborn looked at the others, and his glowing form shifted as if trembling for first time in many centuries. He was unsure. He had heard many tales in his life, had seen many worlds born and many fall to ruin, but never before had he felt this kind of truth crawl into his thoughts and stay there. The tall, scaled diplomat of the Varn system leaned back in his chair, his wings curled tightly against his back, his eyes fixed on the human, called Rain, who now sat still and silent, as if his words had not shaken the stars themselves. Tucker moved to the center of the room again, his hand shaking slightly as he opened the next part of the presentation, no longer to show the deadly zones of Earth, no longer to share images of burning deserts or frozen mountains. Now, he wanted to show something else, something even harder to understand. With a wave of his hand, the screen lit up again, not with landscapes or storms, but with people, humans in different shapes and colors, humans running, climbing, jumping, humans falling, and bleeding, humans laughing, and cheering, humans fighting without fear. "These are not soldiers," said Tucker. "These are children, teenagers, workers, explorers. These are humans in training not for war, but for life." The screen showed a young girl no more than 10 lifting a heavy object while standing on cracked ice. Behind her, a man watched calmly. She slipped and almost fell into the freezing water, but caught herself, smiled, and tried again. In this place, they trained children to face danger from early age, no special protection, no safety walls, only trust and courage. The next image showed a group of humans hanging from ropes, climbing a high cliff. The wind pressed against them, the rocks loose, and sharp one lost his grip, fell a short way, scraped his arm, but then pulled himself back up with a grin. "This is not madness," said a soft voice from the fog-covered council seat of the Iridia. "This is something else, something we do not yet understand." Tucker nodded slowly. "These are their games, their sports, their traditions, their tests, not to harm, not to destroy, but to grow and to connect." A small alien from the Hollow Belt asked softly, "But if they live like this, if pain and danger are normal to them, then what happens when real war comes? What happens when they meet true enemies?" The question hung in the air like smoke from a fire long burned. The answer was not given by rain this time, but by the screen itself, which shifted again to show Earth's history, the part that had not yet been discussed. Tucker's voice turned quiet, almost like a whisper. "This is the other truth, the one we almost chose to hide." The screen filled with images of old wars, of great machines rolling across land of fire, falling from the sky, of cities in ruins, and skies black with ash, of humans running and screaming, but never surrendering, never stopping. This is what humans do when they are forced to fight. This is what happens when they are pushed too far. Images changed again, now showing hands rebuilding cities, bridges rising from rubble, food being passed between strangers, enemies, shaking hands, children planting trees in cracked earth. "They destroy," yes, said Tucker, "but they rebuild. They do not forget, but they forgive. They bury their pain, but they grow stronger from it." The silence in the room changed again. It was no longer just awe. It was something colder, something that settled deep like a storm waiting in quiet skies. The elder spoke once more, his voice slow and heavy with thought. "What kind of future do we face if these beings ever turn their will toward conquest, if they ever stop climbing mountains just to test themselves and instead climb stars to claim them?" Rain stood again, this time slower, as if sensing the shift in the room. He looked at them not with pride or anger, but with clarity. "We do not want war," he said. "We do not seek to rule or destroy. We know what war costs. We know how it breaks us. But do not mistake our kindness for weakness. Do not mistake our laughter for blindness. Do not mistake our scars for fear." He paused, looking at each face. "If we come to your world, we come in peace. If we shake your hands, it is with respect. If we build beside you, it is with hope. But if you bring danger to our home, if you threaten what we love, you will learn what it means when a world of fire and ice and storm teaches its children how to endure." The words landed not like weapons, but like truth, so heavy it could not be lifted, only accepted. The stars outside still blinked cold and far, but the council now saw something new, not in the sky, but in the human eyes. Not threat, not conquest, but a promise. And in that moment, they all understood. Earth did not make weak things. It made humans. The chamber no longer felt like a place of power. It felt like a place of reckoning, of reflection, of questions that had waited too long to be asked. Shadows moved along the curved walls like ghosts of past silence as the council members shifted in their seats, each lost in thought, each pulled into memories they had long buried or simply ignored. Tucker stood still near the screen, but his hands hung by his sides. No more waves, no more commands to change the images, because there was nothing more to show, nothing more that could be explained with pictures or maps or numbers. Now the truth had become something far more personal. The elder of Mistborn, who had once walked through the dust of stars before most races even knew how to speak, was the first to speak. Again, his voice was thin, not weak, but stripped of pride like old bark falling from an ancient tree. "There was a time," he said slowly, "when my world had wild lands, when the storms came without warning, and the seas rose high and the ground open beneath us. We used to live close to the wind, close to the fire. But then we turned away from it We built walls, we built machines, and then we forgot. He looked at Rain not with fear, not with envy, but with something older, something like sorrow. We forgot what it meant to be tested. A red-scaled diplomat of Varn who had remained silent since Part 2 finally opened his mouth, his voice deep and sharp like stone breaking under heat. We had cliffs too once, he said, with storms that screamed louder than thunder and skies that never stopped crying. We trained and we fought in them, but our leaders saw death and chose safety. They took us underground and sealed the sky above us. And we grew smart, yes, we grew strong, yes, but we grew soft inside where no eyes could see. A creature from the hollow belt whose form shimmered like smoke floated forward. Her voice was a whisper only heard in the mind. We drift now through space, never touching ground, never facing storm, never feeling the weight of world below our feet. We are safe, yes, but we are fading too. Our stories have no teeth, our songs have no fire. They all looked at each other for the first time, not as rulers, not as judges, but as beings who had hidden the same truth in different ways. Talker turned slowly to the screen again, and the room dimmed once more, but this time the screen did not show Earth. Instead, it showed their own worlds, not as they were now, but as they had once been before the walls, before the shelters, before the machines took away the struggle. Old footage, forgotten records, old tales once told to children showed green fields and rough winds, rivers that could kill and skies that burned, and in those places their people once walked with pride, not because they were safe, but because they were strong. But that time was gone. And now they saw the humans not as strange, not as mad, but as reminders of who they all once were before fear became law, before comfort became prison, before survival became stagnation. Rain had not moved, he had not spoken, but his silence was louder than words, and the weight of his presence was now not heavy because of power, but because of purpose. They had called Earth the world of death and storm and chaos. But perhaps Earth had kept something precious, something no other world had held on to. The right to face danger and grow from it. The elder finally looked up, his glowing eyes dim, but steady, and spoke again with slow, trembling words. Perhaps it is not Earth that is strange, but us. Perhaps it is not the humans who are the mystery, but our own fear of what we used to be. Rain finally stood again, but not to speak, only to walk forward a steps, quiet, yet strong like someone who has crossed long deserts and high peaks and deep oceans, not just in body but in spirit. He reached the center of the chamber and turned slowly, letting his eyes meet each one of theirs without pride, without demand, without shame. We do not seek to make others like us, he said calmly. We only come to learn and to share. And if we remind you of something lost, then maybe that thing is not lost forever. Maybe it is waiting inside you. He pointed to his chest and then opened his hand as if releasing something into the air. We are not perfect. We're not the best at everything, but we are still reaching, still climbing, still falling, and still rising. And maybe that is what makes us human. He stepped back into the shadows, once more leaving his words hanging in the quiet, like the final echo of a great bell that refuses to fade. And the council looked not at Earth this time, but at themselves, and what they might still become. The chamber had grown still again, but the silence was not the same as before. It was not the silence of fear or doubt. It was a silence of minds waking up from long sleep of hearts, remembering how to beat for something more than comfort or safety. The stars outside blinked gently, as if listening, as if waiting to see what would come next. The elder of Mistborn closed his eyes, and his glow dimmed, then brightened again like a star learning to shine all over his face. Something new had begun to form, a kind of hope that had no name yet, but lived in the spaces between the old truths and the new ones. Talker stood again, but not to speak. He turned instead to the being beside him, a small figure within arms and eyes, like deep pools of night, the representative of the Iridia, a species known for their wisdom, but not for bravery. She stepped forward, her voice soft but firm, filled with something even she had not known was inside her until now. I want to go to Earth. The chamber stirred. Voices rose in soft surprise. Eyes blinked wide. She continued without shaking, without hiding. I want to see it not through a screen, not through numbers or reports. I want to walk on its ground. I want to feel the ice, the heat, the storm. I want to understand what the humans face every day and what we have turned away from. The elder leaned forward, his glowing form still calm but curious. And you think this will change something? I do, she said, her hands now clenched tight, not in fear, but in fire. Talker stepped beside her. He nodded slowly. I will go too, not just to observe, but to join them, to learn, not like a scholar, but like a student, like a climber on his first mountain. A ripple moved through the council, not of panic, not rejection, but a silent challenge. Some turned away, unsure, some leaned forward, drawn, some stood. as if their legs remembered old paths, old climbs, old stories. Rain watched all of this without a word. He did not smile. He did not speak. He only watched as if waiting not for praise, but for action. Soon more voices followed. The tall, scaled Varn diplomat stepped forward. I will send 2 of my kind. They are young and strong and hungry for meaning, not just safety. Another followed from the cloud swarm, her voice airy. And strange, we will send watchers who will become walkers if their minds allow it. The hollow belt shimmered and offered drones with memory cores to travel and feel and return not with data, but with understanding. And slowly, one by one, the room began to shift not in shape, but in soul. This was no longer just a meeting of rulers. It had become something more quiet, beginning a silent rebellion against the cage of fear they had built around their own stars. The elder Mistborn finally spoke again, his voice now steady and wide like wind moving over deep oceans. We forgot what it meant to be tested. We forgot what it meant to choose a harder path. Perhaps this is a time to remember. Rain stepped forward not as a leader, not as a teacher, just as a man who had come from a world full of storms and teeth and fire, and who had learned to love it anyway. He raised one hand and pointed at the stars beyond the glass above them. You want to understand Earth, then come not to conquer, not to judge, not to fear, but to feel. Come and fall and rise again. Come and break and heal. Come and be human, even if only for a moment. There were no cheers, no loud music, no bright lights. Only the soft sound of steps as Iridia stepped toward the gate, her thin form shaking not with fear, but with breath. She was the first, but not the last. The council began to change from that day, not all at once, not all together, but the seeds had been planted and the ground had been shaken. Some would resist, some would hide, but others would go. They would walk on burning sand and frozen fields. They would face winds that howled and rains that cut. They would bleed. They would cry, they would fall, but they would also laugh, and they would rise, and in time they would understand. The deadliest places on earth were not only deadly, they were also alive, and those who called it home were not just survivors. They were something more. They were human, and that was the beginning of everything new. The sky above earth was not quiet, it never had been, it was full of light, and thunder full of change, full of challenge. Clouds moved, fast winds howled through broken valleys, and across frozen lakes, and down into burning deserts. But something new now flew above it. A small craft, silent as thought, drifting down to the layers of storm, and cold its sides marked not by weapons, but by symbols of peace. Inside it stood the Iridia ambassador, her thin form covered in a simple cloak, her eyes wide not in fear, but in awe as the blue and white chaos of earth revealed itself. Talker stood beside her, his hands gripping a strap to keep balance, as the ship shook with the weight of Earth's breath. So this is what you face every day, he said, not as a question, but as a truth. Rain nodded from his seat nearby, his face calm, as he watched their reactions. The mountain is not the enemy. He said the enemy is thinking you were never meant to climb it. They landed in the Himalayas where the air itself was thin and sharp, and every step burned the lungs, but none of them stopped, not even the Iridia, whose species had not touched true ground in centuries. Their feet sank into snow, their breath turned to mist, and the sky above them seemed close enough to reach with a single hand. A guide waited for them, a human girl no older than 20 with sunburnt skin and a smile that spoke of storms survived and trails conquered. She did not bow, she did not salute. She simply turned and said, "Follow me." They climbed for hours. No shields, no drones, no easy paths, only rock and wind and silence. And something inside them began to change. The Iridia slipped once, her form falling against cold stone, her cloak tearing, but she pushed herself up without help, her thin hand finding grip again as her body trembled but moved forward. Talker felt to a cut across his cheek, but he laughed not loud, not wild, just a small laugh of someone who found himself alive in a place where nothing was guaranteed. Rain watched from behind, his pack heavier than theirs, but his steps light, as if this mountain was part of him. At the top, they found nothing. No monument, no flag, only wind and sky and the beating of their own hearts. And that was enough. That was more than enough. The Iridia turned to Rain, her voice barely heard over the wind. "I thought we came to see Earth, but I think we came to see ourselves." He nodded and pointed down to the valleys below and the forest beyond, and the deserts past the forest and the oceans beyond that. This is only one place. He said Earth does not end here, and neither does what it teaches. They spent the next days walking through other zones, volcanic plains, jungle storms, dry red lands that cracked beneath their feet. And yet always humans were there, laughing, building, helping, training, teaching, not perfect, but present, everywhere. And the aliens began to understand what no report could teach and what no meeting could explain. The humans did not survive Earth. They became it. Every storm was in their soul, every mountain in their will, every danger in their blood. And yet they still smiled. They still welcomed others. They still reached out a hand, not to lead, not to dominate, but to walk together. The Iridia wept once not because of pain, not because of fear, but because she saw a child with no shoes helping a stranger carry water through wind and dust. Tucker stood in the ruins of a city once broken by earthquake, now filled with laughter and painted walls and music, and he knew then that his own world could rise again too. When they returned to the stars, something had shifted. Their eyes no longer searched for comfort. They searched for challenge. Their hands no longer built walls. They built paths. And the council that had once called Earth too dangerous now sent its young to learn what courage meant. And Earth welcomed them, one by one, race by race, not with parades, but with open skies and endless roads. Some broke, some turned back, but many stayed. Many climbed. Many fell and rose again, and in time the stars whispered a new story, a story not of fear, not of fire, but of fire turned to strength, of pain turned to wisdom, of death turned to life. And always at the center of that story was one planet, wild, unforgiving, and beautiful, a place the galaxy once feared, but now called home.